She sang of love just as she lived for love, like a Lorelei, flaunting her charms as she lured men on and on to their eternal destruction.
During her relatively short but electrifying career, Marilyn Monroe established herself as sex personified.
Well, where shall I sleep?
She did not think that there was anything wrong with sex. She did not have any shame about her body.
But Marilyn's personal life was marred by a series of broken relationships. Her men ranged from the brooding Yankee clipper, Joe DiMaggio, to the brilliant playwright, Arthur Miller.
There were times when Marilyn was like this vacuum, insatiable, because she couldn't get enough love, she couldn't get enough attention.
In the next 2 hours, we will explore the real-life romances of the international love goddess who never truly believed she was loved. We will return to Marilyn's traumatic childhood.
There are stories of molestation. She was definitely a vulnerable child.
In an exclusive interview, we'll talk with Jim Dougherty, the man who married a young Norma Jean Baker to save her from going to an orphanage.
I found out she was a little more grown up than she appeared to be.
We'll follow Norma Jean's transformation from teenage housewife to sexy starlet kept by an aging agent.
She was not in love with Johnny, but she loved him for what he was trying to do for her.
We will uncover the private torment in Marilyn's famed union with baseball legend Joe DiMaggio.
Her very sexuality that attracted him initially also was a cause of great conflict in the marriage.
We will see how Marilyn thought she found happiness with playwright Arthur Miller, only to discover her dreams unraveling.
She was distraught psychologically. Everything was coming to a crisis.
We will hear from some of Marilyn's many other lovers.
My romance cost me my first wife.
I didn't want to become a Mr. Monroe because I think that's what was going to happen. Anybody who would marry her.
Marilyn was an unsettled soul.
And we will investigate Marilyn's affairs with the Kennedys, affairs that some believe led to her untimely death.
She was a girl that knew too much, and there were certain big people in America at that time that were afraid of what she might do.
This is the story of one woman's romantic hopes and of the lengths she went to fulfill them. This is the story of the many loves of Marilyn Monroe, the true Hollywood story.
The dream of being one of her life's ambition was to be a star.
Never recover from the public scandal.
On June 1st, 1926, a 24-year-old film editor named Gladys Monroe Baker delivered a baby out of wedlock. Gladys named the girl after her favorite movie stars, Norma Talmadge and Jean Eagles. Norma Jean Baker's childhood played like a gritty documentary, not a product of the Hollywood dream factory. First husband, Jim Dougherty.
Norma Jean was born in the charity ward in County Hospital in Los Angeles. And Gladys wanted to raise her, but she became emotionally unstable. And she didn't have the money, and she had all kinds of problems. And at that time, if you were married and had children, that was fine. But if you were single and had children, you were bad.
Author Adam Victor.
Still to this day, nobody can say with any certainty who Marilyn's father was.
Strapped with bills and incapable of caring for Norma Jean, Gladys made a desperate decision.
She put Norma Jean in an orphanage, and that didn't work out, so she put her in a foster home, and that didn't work out, so she put her back in an orphanage. That didn't work out, then she put her in another foster home.
Norma Jean's transient lifestyle continued until she was in grade school.
And then, when Marilyn was about 7 years of age, her mother brought her to live with her, and it seemed like she was getting her life together. But really not too many months into that, her mental illness, just feelings of despair and paranoia overwhelmed her, and she was taken away to a mental institution.
Norma Jean was traumatized. Gladys's best friend, Grace McKee, took in the little girl. To Norma Jean, she was beloved Aunt Grace.
She took her to the matinees and would also take her down to the studios and indulged little girls' fascinations with dressing up and cosmetics.
Vocal coach Hal Schaefer.
She did make a remark once that when she was a kid, she used to go to the movies and sit in the front seat so that she could look up at the screen, this enormous screen then, and picture herself up there as a movie star.
Hollywood columnist James Bacon.
She told me she thought Clark Gable was her father. She thought Gable had got her mother pregnant. It was just kind of wishful thinking. She'd like Clark Gable to be her father.
But Clark Gable was not her father, and her mother was in a mental hospital. Worse, Aunt Grace ran out of money. In September 1935, Grace brought 9-year-old Norma Jean to the Los Angeles Orphans' Home in Hollywood. Norma Jean was miserable, shy, and alone.
She was terrified by it, just being abandoned to her fate.
Norma Jean spent 2 years at the orphanage. Then, in 1937, the 11-year-old returned to Aunt Grace and her new husband, Doc Goddard, an engineer in the San Fernando Valley. Grace became Norma Jean's foster mother, and the County of Los Angeles paid Norma Jean's room and board. But once again, Norma Jean's family stability was short-lived. In 1941, Doc Goddard's job required a move to Virginia. The couple decided to leave 15-year-old Norma Jean behind. According to Dougherty, the motivation was financial.
Grace wouldn't get paid if she took her back there to Virginia. She was being paid by the county, Los Angeles County, because of foster care.
But some biographers think there were more sinister reasons.
Doc Goddard had a history of drinking, and there was reportedly an incident where he fondled her. She was a young girl. This would quite possibly explain why there was evasive action that needed to be taken, why Norma Jean had to move out of that home.
As an adult, Norma Jean told numerous stories of being molested as a child.
Marilyn did talk about these incidents, but the details would change. If they happened, they would have been extremely traumatic, and she was most definitely a vulnerable child.
Norma Jean dreaded returning to the orphanage, but Grace came up with an alternate plan. She targeted a neighbor's son, Jim Dougherty, as a potential husband for Norma Jean.
She was 15 years old, and I was 20, and I thought that she was too young to pay much attention to.
Grace and Jim's mother arranged for Jim to take Norma Jean to a Christmas dance.
I found out she was a little more grown up than she appeared to be. So when Mom came and asked me if I wanted to marry her, I said, oh my God, she's just a baby. She said, oh, she's not. Think about it. You keep her from going to an orphanage. And I said, okay, I'll think about it. And we dated a few more times. And I said, yeah, I'll get married.
For 15-year-old Norma Jean, marriage was better than the orphanage. At last she could feel grown up and wanted.
She couldn't wait to go to school and tell everybody she was going to get married.
On June 19th, 1942, 2 weeks after her 16th birthday, Norma Jean Baker married 21-year-old Jim Dougherty. Norma Jean dropped out of the 10th grade to be a homemaker. When her husband joined the Merchant Marines, the couple moved to Catalina Island for his training.
She had a great sense of humor. Once a month I had to work all night. And I'd come and knock on the door and she'd say, George? I said, no. She said, Bill? I said, no. She said, who is it? I said, it's your husband. Get out here and open this door. And she'd come to the door just laughing up a storm.
Norma Jean was childlike, unsophisticated, and lonely.
The only family she had at that time was her dolls. She had rag dolls and porcelain dolls. You'd find them on the bed, because that's where she kept them, so she could be there whenever they needed her. She wanted a baby so bad, and I wouldn't let her have a baby as young as she was.
Desperate for some type of family connection, Norma Jean tracked down a man she thought might be her father. She wept when he refused to take her call.
I had to cuddle and hold her for hours. She hated rejection. She wanted everybody to love her.
Norma Jean was not much happier when her birth mother, Gladys, who was still in a mental hospital, came to visit.
Her mother looked at her like, who are you, kid? It was a very sad thing.
She was in and out of mental institutions for the rest of her life. That was this huge fear for Marilyn that there was going to be no escaping this.
Dougherty shipped off to the Pacific in the spring of 1944. 17-year-old Norma Jean went to work in an aircraft plant, packing parachutes. One day in August, an Army photographer named David Conover visited the factory to photograph civilians involved in the war effort.
David took pictures of her through the factory and then invited her to come out into the field and take some more pictures. He would build a book for her, so to speak, and send her to Blue Book Modeling Agency.
Photographer Joseph Jasger sometimes worked for the Blue Book Modeling Agency in Hollywood.
The Blue Book Agency was to train girls who wanted to learn modeling. and helped them get jobs in movies, modeling assignments, acting on occasion.
Norma Jean applied to the agency in March 1946. Jasker took her first shots. The agency quickly found magazine work for Norma Jean, but not modeling fashions.
We had what they called cheesecake. We used to take girls in cute poses, risque, and never showed much.
If she was enjoying herself, it didn't bother me. I kept telling her, now when I get home, this stops. We're going to have a family, we're going to have children. And she said, yes, that's true, that's true.
One night, Jasker took Norma Jean along to help him photograph celebrities at Hollywood night spots.
She had a bag of flash bulbs, and we went right in and go up to all the tables where celebrities were there, and I said, there's Clark Gable. And she looked, and when she saw Clark Gable, she dropped the flash bulb, and everybody laughed.
Within 6 months, Norma Jean had enough modeling work to quit her job at the factory.
She was on so many magazine covers that she got an agent, and he got her a screen test. I found the script and asked her about it, and she said, oh, that's nothing. She knew I didn't approve of it.
On July 19, 1946, 20-year-old Norma Jean Dougherty, her hair newly dyed blonde, was given a screen test at 20th Century Fox. By then, a letter was making its way to her husband's ship on China's Yangtze River.
The mail came aboard, and it said, Dougherty, here's a letter from an attorney. Another guy says, yeah, your old lady's divorcing you. And I opened it up, and sure enough, it was a letter from an attorney.
Norma Jean Dougherty signed a 6-month, $75 a week contract with Fox on August 26, 1946. The following month, Jim Dougherty returned to Los Angeles. Norma Jean presented him with divorce papers.
I tried to convince her that being a movie actress wasn't the way to go. Being Mrs. Dougherty was much better. It didn't work, so I signed the papers. And just before I left, she says, I'm going to change my name. She says, I'm going to be Marilyn Monroe.
Coming up, Marilyn brings home the bacon, James Bacon.
One thing led to another, and Merle and I were in bed.
And later, a squeeze play on the home front.
Her very sexuality that attracted him initially also was a cause of great conflict in the marriage.
It runs through the heart of Hollywood.
In September 1946, 20-year-old Norma Jean Dougherty laid the foundations for a brand new life. Hoping to leave behind a childhood of pain and rejection, she divorced her husband, signed a contract with 20th Century Fox, and changed her name. Marilyn Monroe was born. Photographer Joseph Jasker was one of the first to witness Norma Jean's transformation.
She explained to me what her new name was. She said, I said, what's that mean? Marilyn Monroe. Marilyn came from Marilyn Miller, musical comedy star, and Monroe was her mother's maiden name.
But a new name wasn't enough to guarantee stardom. After giving her only 2 bit parts, 20th Century Fox executives decided not to renew Monroe's contract. Broke and out of work, 21-year-old Marilyn soon caught on to the Hollywood game. Like other aspiring young actresses, she began attending stag parties given by industry power brokers. Hollywood columnist James Bacon.
The women were expected to go off in a bedroom with the guys, and they always did.
By early 1948, Marilyn caught the eye of a 69-year-old movie mogul, Joseph Schenck.
Joe was kind of a fat guy, cigar smoking, you know. If you were going to cast a producer for a movie, he'd be it.
In 1940s Hollywood, an aspiring starlet's sexuality was almost the only currency she had. Schenck soon made Marilyn an offer she couldn't refuse if she wanted movie work.
I thought she lived at the Studio Club, which was kind of a YWCA for starlets. And she said, I live at Joe Schenck's guest house. I said, Marilyn, you're going to be a big star. You know, if you're fooling around with the chairman of the board of 20th Century Fox.
Despite the living arrangement, Monroe was not seeing Skank exclusively. She dated a lot of men, including Bacon, whom she snuck into the guest house one evening.
You know, after you have a couple bottles of Dom Perignon on, you think you're Clark Gable. And one thing led to another, and Marilyn and I were in bed.
Suddenly, the phone rang.
It was the butler for Joe Skank, and he said, "Mr. Skank wants you right away, Miss Monroe." So Marilyn got up, went to start putting on makeup, and she was taking a lot of time. And I said, "Marilyn, geez, that stuff doesn't last long." You know, he's taking a shot for his erectile dysfunction. But she kept putting the makeup on slowly. She went up to the house, and then she came back right away, and she says, "Too late."
Marilyn's association with Skank paid off when he put in a call to Harry Cohn, the head of Columbia Pictures.
He was a poker-playing pal of Harry Cohn's, and he called Harry Cohn up, and that's how she got that picture, Ladies of the Chorus.
Marilyn not only got a part in the burlesque drama, she landed a contract with Columbia in March 1948. The 21-year-old was thrilled to be back under contract. Soon, Marilyn was involved with another man, a handsome vocal coach named Fred Karger. 32-year-old Karger was separated from his wife, author Adam Victor.
And Marilyn really was a waif around Hollywood. He took her home to his family. Marilyn was, having had such a traumatic and incomplete family life herself, was often seeking stable family situations where she could just get some of that family vibe that she had not had herself. And Marilyn fell head over heels in love with this guy.
Marilyn was so in love with Karger that she moved out of Joe Skank's guest house and into her own apartment. But she was devastated when Karger divorced his wife and did not propose to her.
There was some attraction there, most definitely, but Karger had a young daughter and did not see her as a long-term woman in his life.
Marilyn was in for another disappointment. As she neared the end of her 6-month contract, Monroe was summoned by Harry Cohn and invited to spend the weekend on his yacht.
Marilyn said the wrong thing. She says to Harry Cohn, "Is Mrs. Cohn going with us?" And Harry Cohn flew into a rage because these moguls hate to be reminded of their family ties when they're committing adultery.
Cohn did not renew Monroe's contract. By September, 22-year-old Marilyn was again unemployed. Monroe knew just what to do.
She says the only way to get ahead in this town is to sleep with directors or someone who can help you. And that's one of the reasons she had a big affair with Johnny Hyde.
52-year-old Hyde spotted Marilyn at a party in December. The diminutive Hyde was one of Hollywood's most powerful agents, with clients like Lana Turner and Rita Hayworth. In Marilyn, Hyde perceived something no one else had noticed, the makings of a great star. He also saw a potential love interest, despite the fact that he was married with 4 children. In January 1949, Hyde suggested a quiet weekend in Palm Springs to discuss Marilyn's career plans. It was the beginning of a mutually beneficial relationship. The smitten Hyde soon left his wife and children. Marilyn's friend, Amy Green Andrews.
Johnny Hyde protected her and tried to do the best he could for her. And she loved him for it. She was not in love with Johnny, but she loved him for what he was trying to do for her, and she felt comforted by him.
Hyde rented a house in Beverly Hills for Marilyn. To fend off prying eyes, Monroe also maintained a room at the Beverly Carlton Hotel. Hyde then arranged for a makeover.
She had quite a bit of surgery. She had an overbite, for instance, her teeth. Her nose is bulbous. She had never had a beauty mark there on a cheek, and her chin was different.
With Marilyn's physical transformation complete, Hyde began shopping his new client to the studios.
He's the guy that got her in Asphalt Jungle, All About Eve, and really launched her career.
The 1950 film, The Asphalt Jungle, was pivotal for Marilyn. Bacon ran into Monroe when she auditioned for the role of the sexy yet vulnerable mistress, a part that came to define her career.
She had this beautiful breasts, and she stuffed herself with cotton. And she looked like a filing cabinet with the top drawer pulled out. And I said, Marilyn, you look grotesque. Take those damn falsies out. She says, oh no. She says, Johnny Hyde says they want a sex pot, and I got to look like one. And she went up, and the next day I saw John Huston, who was the director of the Asphalt Jungle, and I said, John, what'd you do with Marilyn's falsies? He says, I reached in, pulled them out, and said, Marilyn, you've got the part.
The Asphalt Jungle was a big success, and Monroe exhibited enough star power to catch the eye of 20th Century Fox head Darryl Zanuck, who re-signed the actress to another 6-month contract. By the end of 1950, 54-year-old Hyde was pressing 24-year-old Monroe for marriage.
There was one word that she feared, or 2 words, that she feared more than anything else in the world, and that was homewrecker. So the reason she didn't marry Johnny Hyde is because he was married. She didn't want to hurt the woman. She didn't want to hurt the children.
On December 18th, Marilyn received devastating news. Hyde suffered a fatal heart attack. Guilty about rejecting her benefactor just before he died, Marilyn downed a bottle of sleeping pills. She was in a coma when a friend saved her. It was Monroe's first suicide attempt, but it would not be her last. By 1950, 24-year-old Marilyn Monroe was on her way to movie success. But in December, her benefactor and lover, the powerful agent Johnny Hyde, died of a heart attack. Monroe's blossoming career was suddenly in jeopardy. In January 1951, Monroe reported for work on As Young as You Feel, the last movie Johnny Hyde arranged for her. Grief-stricken, Marilyn struggled through her scenes. Friend Amy Green Andrews.
When she was finished with the very small scene, it was, you know, guilt, 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 I should have done it. So she went to a soundstage on 20th and was crying. And all of a sudden, Elia Kazan came walking by with Arthur Miller.
Director Kazan and playwright Miller were 2 of the most powerful men in American theater. Kazan comforted Marilyn, who was well aware of his position not only in theater, but in the film community. Hollywood columnist James Bacon.
He'd done Streetcar Named Desire with Marlon Brando, Viva Zapata, and a few others like that. He was very hot.
It wasn't long before Marilyn was sharing a bed with the married director, author Adam Victor.
This was a period when Kazan kind of stepped in, really, when Marilyn was quite lonely.
Kazan wasn't the only man drawn to Monroe during that time. His friend Arthur Miller danced the night away with Marilyn at a party.
He felt an intense attraction, just like pretty much every red-blooded American male at that time, and many since. He also felt the childish innocence that endeared her to so many people.
Like Kazan, Miller was married, but unlike his friend, the playwright fled Los Angeles.
He felt a sense of danger, but not so much the sense that she was a dangerous woman. It was danger in his life, because he was a married man, he had a couple of kids. He was also a very shy man.
Kazan was not shy. According to the director's memoirs, in February, Marilyn made a startling announcement.
Marilyn fell pregnant, and Kazan was the suspected perpetrator, and he didn't kind of hang around too long after finding this out.
Marilyn reportedly planned to have an abortion, but later told Kazan she miscarried. By then, Kazan had returned to his family in New York. That May, 20th Century Fox offered 25-year-old Monroe a 7-year contract, a sign of the starlet's drawing power. In the summer, the studio launched a full-scale Marilyn Monroe publicity campaign. Soon Marilyn was involved with a virile Greek actor she met on the Fox lot, Nico Minardos. After a few months, the relationship with the younger man turned serious. Nico Minardos.
There was a period where she wanted to get married at some time. She wanted to have children badly.
Despite the romance with Minardos, Monroe also maintained a relationship with Spiros Skouras, the 59-year-old president of 20th Century Fox. Minardos discovered the affair by accident one night when he was in bed with Marilyn.
There was a knock at the door, and Marilyn said, whoever you are, can you come back in 5 minutes? And she said, it's me, darling, or something. And I opened the door, and it was Spiros Skouras. Well, he kind of barred me from 20th for a while.
Eventually, Minardos was reinstated at Fox. By then, the studio's intense publicity campaign surrounding Marilyn stirred up a firestorm of interest, some of it unwanted. On March 13, 1952, newspapers around the country broke the scandalous news that Marilyn had posed nude for calendar pictures 3 years earlier. Instead of hiding from the press, the actress cleverly turned the incident to her advantage. Monroe made a public statement that she was broke and hungry when she posed for the pictures, and that she was not ashamed. Playboy founding editor Hugh Hefner.
She said, all I had on was the radio. And that flip attitude in the very conservative 1950s, I think, added immeasurably to her appeal. It is an early sign of how attitudes toward sexuality were starting to change, and Marilyn Monroe was very much a part of that and a pioneer in those changing values.
In the wake of the calendar story, Marilyn announced she was dating All-American baseball hero Joe DiMaggio. 37-year-old DiMaggio was recently retired after leading the Yankees to 10 pennants and 10 World Series wins. When DiMaggio saw a picture of Marilyn, he was immediately smitten.
The day after she had her first date with Joe DiMaggio, she told me, she said, I was out with the most interesting Italian last night. And I says, who was it? And she says, Joe DiMaggio. And I said, Joe DiMaggio? And she says, why did you say it like that? I said, he's one of the great baseball stars of all time. Marilyn says, we didn't talk baseball.
Joe's infatuation with Marilyn, it was obviously very strong. I mean, he was pretty single-minded. He saw the photo and he wanted to meet her, and he did, and he courted her assiduously.
4 months after their first date, the Yankee Clipper took Marilyn to his hometown, San Francisco, California.
She was taken up to meet Mom and the family and the sisters, and there was a family restaurant, and there was the huge Italian meals. And that was also something that must have appealed to her a great deal.
Monroe began to shoot Niagara in June 1952. She was dating both Joe DiMaggio and Nico Minardos. Soon, a third man allegedly entered the scene. Writer Robert Slater claims he met Marilyn in 1946 and had an affair with her during the shooting of Niagara. According to Slater, back in Los Angeles, Marilyn suggested their relationship become permanent.
We got talking about marriage and where we would go and so forth, and we decided the best place would be Mexico because that didn't involve a lot of paperwork or blood tests or anything of that nature.
Slater asserts that on October 2, 1952, he and Monroe drove to Tijuana and found a storefront lawyer to marry them. Their witnesses were the lawyer's wife and a friend of Slater's named Kid Chisel.
I gave the lawyer some money. I think it was $10 or something like that at the time. And we signed some document that had my name on it, her name, and 2 witnesses.
The newlyweds returned to Los Angeles on October 4th. Reportedly, when Marilyn's boss, Darryl Zanuck, found out about the marriage, he was furious. According to Slater, Zanuck summoned the couple into his office.
But he said, I want it undone as soon as possible and as quietly as possible.
Slater says he and Monroe returned to Tijuana, hunted down the storefront lawyer, and bribed him to burn up their marriage certificate.
As it was burning, Marilyn kind of, with a little tear coming down her eye and smiling a little bit on the other side, she said, there goes our marriage up in smoke.
But Minardos, who was with Marilyn during the filming of Niagara, disputes Slater's story.
I think once I had heard about a guy that was married to Marilyn at the time that she and I were dating, which was total nonsense.
Minardos is not the only person who questions Slater's account. Numerous Monroe biographers contradict his claims.
People who believe that he made all of this up point to the fact that the only real evidence, the only tangible piece of evidence, is one photograph of Slater and Marilyn, which was taken on the set of Niagara on location.
I'll put my money where my mouth is. I've already shown you 3 of them. I can show you more of them, and they've been published before, a lot of them.
One thing is certain.
Marilyn was seeing a lot of Joe DiMaggio at that time, and that was becoming very, very serious, not far off marriage.
Coming up, the 7-year itch and a 9-month marriage.
He didn't like her exposing herself, and this really was public exposure of the most open kind.
And later, Marilyn plays nurse.
She wanted to know if I was physically up to any kind of love or relationship with her while I was in the hospital.
The biggest names in show business finally get revealed.
By late 1952, 26-year-old Marilyn Monroe completed her transformation from young housewife to larger-than-life sex symbol. But Marilyn's bombshell image complicated her relationship with 38-year-old Joe DiMaggio, who fell for the actress just as she was reaching stardom.
It's Marilyn Monroe skyrocketing to new dramatic heights. When a man took her loveliness in his arms, he took his life in his hands.
20th Century Fox released 3 Marilyn Monroe movies in 1953. Niagara, How to Marry a Millionaire, and Gentlemen Prefer Blondes. The 3 pictures together grossed the then astonishing figure of $25 million.
I just love finding new places to wear diamonds.
At 26, Monroe made more money for Fox than any other star at a Hollywood studio. Fox sold Marilyn as a sex goddess, and America couldn't get enough of her. Hugh Hefner, a young wannabe publisher with a brazen plan for a new men's magazine, decided to use Monroe as his first cover subject.
I was looking for something special for that first issue because I had no money. I needed something to promote it.
But the cover wasn't what generated sales. In the center of the magazine, Hefner featured a nude picture of Marilyn, the same nude shot that surfaced amid scandal a year before.
For someone of already some fame, to be nude in a magazine was unprecedented.
In December 1953, Hefner printed 50,000 copies of his new magazine, and all 50,000 sold out. Monroe's pictures helped legitimize Playboy. Hefner later analyzed Marilyn's image.
She wanted to be taken seriously. She was a very good actress. She read great literature. She came from humble beginnings and she wanted to improve herself, and she suffered as a beautiful woman, as a blonde, and as a Hollywood star and starlet.
Behind her increasingly powerful image, Marilyn was a deeply lonely soul. She found a kindred spirit in Joe DiMaggio. Despite his heroic persona, Joe was, in truth, a lonely and insecure man. The actress and the Yankee Clipper found comfort in each other for 2 years while a fascinated nation watched. When the couple finally married on January 14, 1954, the 27-year-old actress left the word obey out of her vows, a daring notion for a woman in the Eisenhower 50s. Author Adam Victor.
His career had very much come to an end, and he was looking to settle down. Marilyn's career was at the pinnacle. You know, she had just hit the top, and she was not going to give that up for anything.
The public and the press went wild over the marriage.
The marriage to Joe DiMaggio was certainly the love of his life, and the coming together of 2 major celebrities, 2 icons, fueled the imagination of the public.
You could not get any higher profile than that. This was baseball's greatest star marrying, you know, Hollywood's latest, most wonderful queen of the lot.
The couple honeymooned in Japan, where 39-year-old Joe was scheduled to do some coaching. Much to his surprise, DiMaggio was overshadowed by the enormous celebrity of his new wife.
There were crowds and crowds of people at the airport. They couldn't get out of the plane. The riot police had to intervene. Similar scenes at the hotel. They weren't cheering for Joe. They were cheering for Marilyn.
Joe was even more distressed when Marilyn left the honeymoon and was flown by helicopter to a snow-covered mountain in Korea. There, clad in only a spaghetti-strap dress, Monroe performed before a live audience for the first time. Joe's new bride whipped the GIs into a frenzy.
That was the first time that she really had the chance to see the upturned faces basking in her reflected radiance. And after she'd experienced this, she said to Joe, it was amazing, you know, all of these people out there. It was just such an incredible feeling, and he couldn't understand what it was like, and he is reported to dryly have replied, yes, I do know what it was like.
Marilyn later said, I'll never forget my honeymoon in Korea with the 45th Division. But back in Los Angeles, Marilyn told friends that Joe was the best lover she ever had. Unfortunately, their compatibility did not extend far outside the bedroom. Hollywood columnist James Bacon.
Joe hated show business and everybody in it. The only person he was ever friendly with in show business was Frank Sinatra, and that was because they were both fellow Italians. One Friday afternoon, Marilyn called me up. She says, "Why don't you come over and have dinner with us?" She says, "You're in show business, but you're also a sports fan, and you can talk sports with Joe, because all he does all day long is watch baseball games on television."
Joe wanted to have the traditional immigrant Italian wife, and Marilyn was not about to give up his hard-won stardom, and really, the world was at her feet, to go and hide away in some quiet little leafy suburb of San Francisco, cooking spaghetti and meatballs for Joe.
Joe's notions of proper wifely behavior went beyond cooking and cleaning.
He did not want his wife, who was renowned for just this kind of physical appeal, this raw sexual appeal, he did not want her to be showing that. He didn't want her to go out in the low-cut dresses, but that was expected of her. That was what she had to do. That was who she was, as far as the public was concerned.
And Marilyn was nothing if not an expert at giving her public what they wanted.
So it was sometimes 8 hours of teasing her hair and getting everything just right, and the makeup and the body makeup, getting sewn into dresses, not just one size too tight, but 2 sizes too tight.
Joe was in love with the image, and at the same time had a great deal of conflict and problem with it. Her very sexuality that attracted him initially also was a cause of great conflict in the marriage.
The conflict between Joe and Marilyn was apparent to Monroe's vocal coach, Hal Schaefer.
He was insanely jealous of any man being with her, or close to her, or touching her. I don't know what he did about kissing scenes that she had in movies.
With jealousy came stormy fits of temper.
She was kind of trembling, and she did say, I'm scared of him."
In August 1954, 28-year-old Monroe began to shoot The 7-Year Itch. Monroe was cast as the object of a married man's fantasies.
Now I'm going to take you in my arms and kiss you. Very quickly and very hard.
Wait a minute!
With Marilyn Monroe, soaring to new heights as the screen's most lovable laugh getter.
In what would become her most famous movie scene, Marilyn was supposed to stand over a New York subway grating while a blast of air blew her skirt over her head. On September 9th, Monroe, director Billy Wilder, and his crew gathered on Lexington Avenue in the middle of the night to shoot the scene over and over and over again.
There was a huge crowd being kept back by policemen, and for 2 hours on a cold morning, Marilyn was subjected to a cold blast from beneath. Now, Joe was brought along by Walter Winchell, a good pal of his. It wasn't perhaps such a friendly thing to do because Joe was an intensely jealous man.
Marilyn's friend Amy Green Andrews was standing next to DiMaggio during the shoot.
He sees the shenanigans going on, and he begins to tremble. And I sort of put my arms around his waist, and I said, it's only a film, don't worry about it, it's nothing.
He didn't like her exposing herself, and this really was public exposure of the most open kind.
And he looked down at me and he said, with a totally tortured face, he said, tell her I'm going back to the hotel. I can't watch another minute of this.
And Marilyn later told me he cuffed her around that night.
To Marilyn, it was Joe who went too far. After only 9 months of marriage, Monroe left DiMaggio. Marilyn held a press conference in October to announce that she was filing for divorce. She quickly found comfort in the arms of Hal Schaefer.
I thought that she was like a little flower, hadn't yet bloomed. I thought there was so much to her that hadn't happened yet. And she was so basically such a good soul, in my opinion. So, yes, we did get romantically involved.
But the Yankee Clipper was not going to give up without a fight.
I spoke to him once on the phone, and he, in such a very nice manner, asked me to come over to the house to meet him and have a talk, man to man.
the love-struck Schaefer was ready to take up the challenge.
He did physically abuse her, and that's what enraged me so much that I was willing to go and confront him, because I truly loved her. And he was, I don't know, twice my size or whatever, but I was on my way to confront him. But she said he would make dog meat out of me. So she stopped me from going.
Coming up, the worst is yet to come.
They all came en masse and broke this door in.
And later, a misfit marriage.
He was just beginning to question the wisdom of marrying her. He hadn't realized what he let himself in for.
The 1954 wedding of America's blonde bombshell and baseball's biggest legend was a match made in publicity heaven. But after just 9 months, Marilyn Monroe and Joe DiMaggio's marriage fell apart. 28-year-old Monroe turned to her vocal coach and confidant, Hal Schaefer, for solace in the fall of 1954.
I was very deeply in love with her, and I felt that she was in love with me. But being in love with me was not permanent in any fashion with Marilyn. It was very difficult for her to hold on to anything. Because of her childhood, she was standing in sand all the time, and it kept shifting. She didn't have any foundation.
But 39-year-old DiMaggio was determined to keep Monroe to himself.
If he could have caught her in an adulterous situation, he could have stopped the divorce. He pursued her forever after that, and had us followed, had our cars bugged, had the phones bugged. It was a bad time.
DiMaggio discovered that the couple was using a friend's Hollywood apartment for trysts. On November 5, 1954, reporter James Bacon observed DiMaggio planning a surprise attack over dinner with Frank Sinatra.
Frank tried to talk Joe out of going over. He wanted to go over and bust down that door.
We were very close to making love. I don't remember the stage we were at, but I would say half-dressed.
But Joe couldn't be dissuaded, so Frank, as a fellow Italian, went with him.
And all of a sudden, for some reason, Marilyn got these vibrations, and we went over to the window, and we saw this group standing across the street, one of whom was Joe DiMaggio, and another was Frank Sinatra. They all came en masse and broke this door in, demolished it.
And they kicked down the wrong door.
It sounded like an explosion.
It was a door of an old maid, a spinster, maybe about 50, 60 years old, sound asleep in her bed, and all of a sudden her door's knocked down, and there's Joe DiMaggio and Frank Sinatra in the doorway.
And we scrambled to get out the back way, and we made it, luckily.
To Schaefer, the wrong door raid was no laughing matter.
They were involved with the mafia, and it seemed overwhelming to me. I was still a young man, and I couldn't really handle it. And I thought the only way out was for me to disappear. So I had a major suicide attempt.
Schaefer tried to overdose on pills and typewriter cleaning fluid, but he was rescued and taken to Santa Monica Hospital. Monroe rushed to his bedside.
She wanted to know if I was physically up to having any kind of love or relationship with her while I was in the hospital. And I thought that that was the most caring thing I had come across. She wanted to share herself with me.
Nonetheless, after Schaefer left the hospital, the two began to drift apart.
Marilyn was an unsettled soul. She could never come to rest anyplace. So her falling in love with somebody, I don't think would ever have any long-range stability. to it.
DiMaggio wasn't the only one putting pressure on Marilyn. The actress was increasingly at odds with her boss, 20th Century Fox chief Darryl Zanuck, friend Amy Green Andrews.
He never understood Marilyn, never for a million years gave her credit for anything, and his way of putting her down, he'd call her strawhead.
Unbeknownst to Zanuck, Marilyn was secretly making plans to form an independent production company with Amy's husband, Milton Green. 32-year-old Milton was a top photographer whose images of Monroe captured her untapped potential. Son, Joshua Green.
In that framework of those pictures, you see a woman whose capabilities are far greater than most models or actresses in the world.
There's great talent there, somewhat misdirected and somewhat confused, but great talent.
The Greens invited Monroe to move into their home in Connecticut in late 1954. Marilyn jumped at the chance.
Marilyn was protected, she was well treated, she was included into a family life, she was given her privacy with full respect.
On January 7th, 1955, the actress and the photographer announced the formation of Marilyn Monroe Productions. Fox immediately put Marilyn on suspension.
She was the first famous actress to break away from a major studio. Now, don't forget, she also had a year left on the contract.
She was supposed to start filming on a new movie, and she just did not want to do another one of these saccharine roles. She wanted to do some serious stuff.
That was why we fought Zanuck for a year. That first year she lived with us. It was a daily, constant battle.
Monroe trusted Milton Green, and together they rode out the storm.
They were soulmates, really, because both of them were artistic. Both of them were very, very shy. They spoke in a realm of their own.
Indeed, some assumed the intimacy between Marilyn and Milton was complete.
People say that they were lovers. Please, they were not lovers. And I know that they would never be lovers because she wouldn't allow it, because of me.
While Milton negotiated with Fox, Marilyn disappeared from public sight. The Greens got her an apartment in Manhattan. At Milton's urging, Marilyn sat in on method acting classes at the famed Actors Studio, which turned out such heavyweights as Paul Newman and James Dean. By February, Marilyn was taking private lessons with studio head Lee Strasberg. Lee's iron-willed wife, Paula, became Marilyn's drama coach for film projects. Lee and Paula's daughter, the late Susan Strasberg.
Marilyn said to me, if I don't face my fears, I'm afraid that they'll kill me, and if I can face them with your father's help, maybe they'll free me.
Marilyn also started seeing an analyst 3 to 5 times a week.
Marilyn was always fearful that she would have some kind of mental illness because her mother was in an asylum, and she was afraid she'd inherited it.
One evening, the Greens took Marilyn out to dinner with their friend, Marlon Brando, one of the highest-profile members of the Actors Studio. Monroe was thrilled. So, evidently, was Brando.
They were a very hot item for that month, or 2 months, or whatever it was.
Brando turned out to be just another fling. But in the spring of 1955, love struck again. The actress reconnected with playwright Arthur Miller, who first ran away from Marilyn's dangerous attractions in 1951. This time, Miller did not flee.
Arthur Miller, of course, was a Jewish Shakespeare. He'd written a great play, The Death of a Salesman.
He was also a supporter of the downtrodden. He depicted a little man in his struggles in life and the unfairness of life, and that was something that Marilyn personally identified with.
She never dreamed that anyone like, quote, intellectual giant like Arthur Miller would deign to even have a second date with her. And they fell in love.
But there was a problem.
He was married, unhappily, granted, had 2 children, unhappily, granted, but there they were. They were, you know, 3 human beings that she was petrified of.
Monroe and Miller carried on their affair in secret for the better part of a year.
I thought she was a very serious girl way back, and that she was struggling, I thought, because she generally was thought of as being a rather lightheaded, if not silly, human being.
By the end of 1955, Marilyn Monroe Productions and 20th Century Fox came to an agreement. Monroe signed a contract to make 4 Fox films over 7 years, at a hefty $100,000 per film. More importantly, the actress got then unheard of script, director, and cinematographer approval, and she was allowed to make one independent movie per year.
This you think is important? Yes, it is. Very important to me.
Marilyn traveled to Phoenix and Sun Valley to shoot Bus Stop in early 1956. Miller called her every day. That June, Miller was granted a divorce in Reno. He immediately returned to New York to be with Marilyn, who was planning a trip to London for her next film.
She was extremely witty, very bright. She had a unique take on things. She asked questions that other people wouldn't ask. She had an inquiring mind. She was fun to be with.
But the couple's reunion was marred by a real-life witch hunt. That same month, Miller was called to testify before the House Un-American Activities Committee. The playwright was interrogated about Communist Party meetings he attended years before. Miller was also asked to name names, which he refused to do. It wasn't Miller's political testimony, however, that made the headlines.
Now, the world found out that Arthur Miller, intellectual extraordinaire, was going to marry Marilyn Monroe. Actually, when he was at the stand at the House Un-American Activities Committee, he said he needed to go to England, and they asked him why, and he said, to be with a woman who will be my wife.
Do you feel certain at this time that you will be able to get away to go to England?
I feel certain I'm going to try awfully hard.
In the event that you are not able to go, will Miss Monroe still go?
Oh, sure. She's got to go. She's got a contract to go.
Well, that means you may not have a honeymoon together then.
I think we will.
I hope so.
Miller was granted his passport. He was later tried and found guilty of contempt, but the verdict was overturned.
There are many people who speculate that it was the fact that America's sweetheart was about to marry this man that saved him from the House Un-American Activities Committee from coming down him as hard as they possibly could.
30-year-old Monroe and 40-year-old Miller tied the knot in a civil ceremony on June 29, 1956. Marilyn converted to Judaism, Arthur's religion, and 2 days later, they sealed their vows in a Jewish rite.
There was intense and true love between them for quite some time.
The newlyweds left for London in July. The actress was filled with hope for her new marriage and her new film, but Marilyn's happiness would soon be shattered. Coming up, Marilyn takes French lessons.
Marilyn's press agent called me up and says they were discussing a script, and I says, naked in bed?
It runs through the heart of Hollywood.
The Strip is what made Hollywood the glamour capital.
1.7 miles of movie stars and mayhem.
Crack the cocaine and the party's on.
Sunset Strip has seen it all.
Naked girls falling into Jell-O.
But this historic hotspot isn't all good times and glamour.
It was almost like the beginning of the spiral going down.
From Barrymore to Belushi, it's the boulevard that is sex, drugs, and rock and roll. Sunset Strip, tomorrow at 8 on the E! True Hollywood Story.
Do you know what I had to do to get to where I am today? I waited tables, I modeled knitting patterns, I was a girl choking on a peanut in a first aid video. And you're telling me that people get a lifestyle like mine through some promotion?
Just open a Diet Coke and you could be pampered like a movie star before attending a West End premiere and after-show party.
And the giant hot dog at Barbecue World? That was me. That was me.
Some might say you had it too easy.
With O2, more people can reach their friends on other networks with their inclusive texts and minutes. See what you can do. O2.
Miss Monroe, could you tell us what kind of a wedding you're going to have?
Very quiet, I hope.
Marilyn Monroe and playwright Arthur Miller seemed an unlikely match. They stunned the public when they married in June 1956. The following month, with her Pulitzer Prize-winning husband in tow, 30-year-old Monroe traveled to London to shoot a movie. The British went wild. Marilyn was even summoned to meet the Queen.
A one-time, sadly underprivileged little girl. Her gifts inspired Queen Elizabeth to single her out for a woman-to-woman chat.
All Monroe's hopes were riding on the upcoming picture.
The Prince and the Showgirl was the first film under the auspices of Marilyn Monroe Productions, all by themselves.
It seemed ideal. She had Laurence Olivier not only starring opposite her, you know, the greatest classical actor of the time, but he was also directing, and it was a more substantial role, the kind of film she wanted to do.
But Olivier and Monroe were like oil and water. Marilyn's insecurities quickly surfaced.
Olivier didn't take her seriously, and she wanted Miller to stick up for her, which he did to begin with, but she began to feel paranoid. She felt persecuted, and she felt that Miller didn't back her up.
As Marilyn's fears overwhelmed her, she turned more and more to a dangerous combination of barbiturates and champagne. Marilyn's friend, the late Susan Strasberg.
There were times when Marilyn was like this vacuum, insatiable, because she couldn't get enough love, she couldn't get enough attention.
In his biography, Miller says that he didn't realize the neediness, the hurt, the vulnerability that there was in Marilyn, or she actually termed it as the monster in her.
Marilyn was terrified of driving away people who loved her. When she came across Miller's diary one day, she was certain her worst fears were coming true.
He was just beginning to question the wisdom of marrying her. He hadn't realized what he let himself in for.
As for the 40-year-old playwright, he seemed unprepared to handle the crippling insecurities of his new bride.
He'd say, don't take the pills. Well, they don't say, don't take the pills. You take the bottle away and say, you don't take the pills. What's the matter with you? Why can't you learn your lines? We've gone over these lines. He wasn't trying to be mean. It was just his way of dealing with whatever problem up to that point in life.
The fact that Monroe had a close and trusting relationship with her producer, Milton Green, did not help matters. Green's son, Joshua Green.
It was a triangle relationship. His desire to really be her manager and in many ways do what Milton was doing interfered with her foundation of being safe.
The first venture from Marilyn Monroe Productions flopped when the movie was released the following year. Marilyn's dreams were dashed.
If Prince and the Showgirl had been a commercial blockbuster, then Arthur would never have taken the next step. But since it wasn't, it gave him ammunition to shoot Milton down, which he did. He was jealous.
Monroe and Green dissolved their partnership shortly thereafter.
There was a big meeting, and she sat there crying. Because she knew in her heart that nobody else was going to be in her life what Milton was in her life.
Determined to make their marriage work, Miller and Monroe returned to the United States in January 1957. They divided their time between a Manhattan apartment and a home in the Connecticut countryside.
She tried really hard, and Miller also dedicated himself to her to a degree, but these were not great writing years for him. In fact, the time that they were together, he found it really hard to write.
Marilyn turned 31 the following summer. She was ecstatic to discover she was pregnant.
In her fantasy, she wanted to have a child. She could have had a child many times. She had many abortions. But I don't think she had any concept of what it would mean to actually have a child. I'm not talking about love. I'm not talking about, it's the everyday, day in, day out responsibility of having a child she couldn't have coped.
Marilyn did not get the chance. 6 weeks into the pregnancy, she miscarried. Marilyn's maid, Lena Pepitone, remembers Monroe's reaction.
Devastated, 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 crying, 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 crying. Because she really wanted a baby. She said to me all the time, "A lucky woman you are. You are lucky. I know I'm nobody in the world. Not even a dog I got in the house."
The miscarriage triggered an unhappy period in the marriage. Marilyn depended on drugs to sleep, and when she was awake, she drank. She spent many hours with her analyst while Miller hid away in his office, trying to write the next great American play.
The marriage was miserable. Daily fights and screaming and, she'd sleep all day and then he couldn't cope with that. I can't blame him. He had his life.
As she grew disillusioned with Arthur, Marilyn fantasized about another man.
She have a big photographing in Jody March, and she was seeing every day the men I love.
Marilyn became pregnant once more while shooting Some Like It Hot in the fall of 1958. Again, her happiness knew no bounds. Monroe even tried to curb the pill taking and the drinking when she returned to New York in November. But 1 month later, Miller rushed Marilyn to the hospital. She was shrieking in pain. Monroe lost her baby.
After these pregnancies that went wrong, which saddened her enormously, she was extremely low after this.
Monroe was so depressed, she lost track of how many pills and drinks she had one night. The 32-year-old actress was alone in her New York apartment. Miller was away in Connecticut.
When I went to work in the morning, 9 o'clock in the morning, I can open the door because there was a chain on the door, and I had to call the super of one building. We went upstairs, and we find on the floor.
Marilyn was in a coma. The maid summoned a doctor who pumped Monroe's stomach. Miller returned from Connecticut to be with his wife and nurse her back to health. Marilyn's spirits lifted when she began to shoot Let's Make Love with French singer and actor Yves Montand in early 1960. 3 years earlier, Montand and his wife Simone Signoret starred in Miller's play The Crucible in Paris. The two couples had been friendly ever since. During filming, Monroe and Miller took a bungalow adjoining Montand and Signoret's at the Beverly Hills Hotel. In February, Miller left for Ireland to work on another project, and his wife's relationship with her co-star suddenly got very cozy.
I got a call from a waiter at the Beverly Hills Hotel, and he says, I just served breakfast in bed to Marilyn Monroe and Yves Montand, and they were both naked. So I called up, and Yves Montand answered the phone, and I said, what are you doing in bed naked with Marilyn Monroe? He started off in the most rapid French I've ever heard in my life. He would not speak one word of English. Then he hung up real fast. About 10 minutes later, Marilyn's press agent called me up and says they were discussing a script. And I says, naked in bed?
Soon, the affair was all over the gossip columns.
That must have been extremely hard for Miller to swallow. And these are friends of his, and they had all been friends together.
Marilyn hoped that Montand would leave Simone for her.
He may have been set up in her mind as the next knight in shining armor to come and save her.
But Montand's union with Simone was unshakable.
That was a very, very strong relationship. Montand was not going to leave her.
When filming was over, so was the affair, at least for Montand.
Yves says, well, Marilyn's got a schoolgirl's crush on me. And that hurt Marilyn very much, yeah, because she was madly in love with him.
Ironically, while Monroe was having an affair with Montand, Miller was putting the finishing touches on a screenplay he intended as a valentine to his wife.
He wrote The Misfits for her, and that was a disaster.
It was, it was a really meaty role, plenty of emotion going around. Sadly, this was at a time when their marriage was irredeemable.
The Misfits sounded fantastic on paper.
It had Clark Gable, it had Montgomery Clift, it had her, and John Huston producing. It had to be fabulous. It had to be another Maltese Falcon. It wasn't.
She was very disturbed because she felt that it was one more movie, even though it was by her husband for her. Ostensibly, it was a movie that, again, the men's parts were better.
Despite their differences, Monroe and Miller flew to Reno to shoot in July 1960. The tension was palpable from the beginning.
Marilyn was ill physically. She was distraught psychologically. Everything was coming to a crisis.
There was just warring factions. Marilyn and Arthur were not talking from fairly early on.
Arthur Miller was very, very upset about Marilyn's fling with Yves Montand.
In The Misfits, Marilyn played a fragile divorcee who takes up with a trio of cowboys. Monroe was upset that Miller's observations of her became fodder for his screenplay.
Things that she says in the movie are things that I had heard her say in life, except that he took them out of context. So in a way, she said them, but never quite had a chance to explain herself. And I know it bothered her that in the movie, she was drunk in so many of the scenes.
In truth, Marilyn was drinking and taking pills. Marilyn was also suffering from exhaustion and from a paralyzing lack of confidence around Clark Gable.
She loved Clark Gable. She loved Clark Gable because she figured it was her second father.
Gable was on the set at 9 o'clock prompt, knew all his lines, quit at 5 o'clock in the afternoon. And here Marilyn would show up at 4:45, you know, and they'd have to do a scene. And I think it bothered him. I think it caused some stress on Gable's part.
By the end of August, Marilyn was barely able to function. Director John Huston sent Monroe to a hospital in Los Angeles. Some believe Marilyn was suffering a nervous breakdown. Others think she was undergoing detox. In the hospital, Marilyn received a visit from 45-year-old Joe DiMaggio. When she returned to Reno, Marilyn stopped off in San Francisco to see her ex. She was through with Miller.
She felt completely betrayed by the role that he wrote for her. She felt that he could have written anything for her, and instead it had been this vulnerable woman who, in the end, it is not a flattering portrayal.
When filming finished in the fall, Monroe and Miller returned to New York separately. Arthur moved out on November 4th. 12 days later, Clark Gable died of a heart attack. Marilyn felt despondent and guilty.
Marilyn thought she caused Clark Gable's heart attack on that picture. In fact, Kay Gable told me that Marilyn had called her after Clark died and said how sorry she was, and she thought she'd caused it. And Kay said, no, she said, Gable insisted on doing his own stunts.
One night near Christmas, Marilyn's maid, Lena Pepitone, walked into Monroe's 13th floor bedroom and found Marilyn at the window, ready to jump.
She said her life was no life. She no got no family. She no got, what good to have money? She was saying, I don't have nobody. I just by myself.
Pepitone stayed with Marilyn until the actress calmed down. Later, Marilyn phoned her ex-husband, Joe DiMaggio. Marilyn and Joe spent New Year's together. 1961 would bring even stranger twists of fate. By November 1960, Marilyn Monroe's career and personal life were both suffering. In this vulnerable state, Monroe was about to get involved with two of the country's most powerful and most visibly married men. On January 20th, 1961, the 34-year-old actress flew to Mexico for a quick divorce from her husband, Arthur Miller. As the rest of the nation watched the inauguration of John F. Kennedy, Monroe's divorce was granted on the grounds of incompatibility of character. When she returned to New York, Marilyn was in a deep depression. Monroe's analyst committed Marilyn to New York's Payne Whitney Psychiatric Hospital on February 7th. Monroe was terrified she had the mental illness that plagued her mother.
She didn't know that that was where she was going, and that really was one of her worst fears.
Monroe threatened to harm herself if she wasn't released. Instead, she was transferred to the violent ward. Desperate, Marilyn contacted the one man she could count on, her ex-husband and sometime lover, Joe DiMaggio.
Joe is the one who flew up and sprung her. He said what needed to be said to get her out.
The 46-year-old Yankee Clipper took Marilyn to his home in Florida to recuperate.
In her mind, he was the strongest of all men that she knew. He was the most powerful.
In early spring, Marilyn and Joe returned to New York.
I said to him, I said, Mr. DiMaggio, why not marry Monroe again? Because she loves you. And he said to me, I do love her too, but I can marry him because she wants to continue her career.
By April, Monroe was well enough to travel to Los Angeles. She began to see LA-based psychiatrist Dr. Ralph Greenson, spending many weekends at Greenson's home with his wife and children.
She was always searching for some family to give her true identity and solidity.
Soon, Marilyn started canceling appointments. Greenson became alarmed. Monroe was spending time in Palm Springs and Las Vegas with an old friend.
She had a big affair with Sinatra. She always was up there when the Rat Pack was performing. I was up there for a Sinatra opening, and I had the suite next to Frank's in the Sands Hotel. And Jack Entrada, the impresario, called me up and says, I got to move you. Marilyn's coming up for the weekend, and Frank wants her in the suite next to him, which I'm sure she moved into his suite before the weekend was over.
That spring, Sinatra introduced Monroe to actor and fellow Rat Packer Peter Lawford. whose beachfront home in Santa Monica was the site of many wild parties.
Peter Lawford, of course, was the president's brother-in-law, and he threw a lot of parties for JFK when he'd come out here. Peter Lawford introduced her to Jack Kennedy, and she really fell for Jack Kennedy.
Senator George Smathers was best man at John F. Kennedy's 1953 wedding to Jacqueline Bouvier.
Jack was a very charming, sweet guy. I mean, there's nothing that you wouldn't like about him. You got to remember that Jack Kennedy was a fellow who was as good with people as anybody who ever lived.
Marriage did not stop Jack Kennedy from indulging in his every whim.
JFK, of course, was addicted to sex like some people are addicted to cocaine.
The sophisticated First Lady knew how to handle her husband's philandering.
Jackie was very smart. She knew that he played around. Okay, a lot of wives do. Some of them got enough sense not to say anything about it.
Smathers recalls the first time Kennedy told him about Monroe.
He was very smitten by her. He said, I want you to see her. I said, I'd love to. So, not too long after that, they had a party at somewhere in Washington, and I got invited and got to meet Marilyn Monroe.
Kennedy's brother-in-law in California helped the couple find ways to be together.
Lawford had arranged, I think, a few rendezvous in his house in Santa Monica for Marilyn and JFK.
Monroe's meetings with Kennedy were not restricted to the Lawford residence. Smathers and the Secret Service sometimes joined the couple aboard the presidential yacht on the Potomac River.
Neither one of them was bragging about it or talking about it a great deal. They're both very smart. She always handled herself like a lady as far as I was concerned.
In February 1962, at a Lawford dinner party, 35-year-old Marilyn was seated next to Jack's brother, Robert Kennedy. The 37-year-old Attorney General was married with 10 children.
I happened to be invited to the party. Bobby Kennedy was talking about things political, and Marilyn was going around like a secretary. She had horn-rimmed glasses on, taking notes of what he said. That obsession for learning.
Monroe had many interests the public never suspected, including a project by a Mexican screenwriter, José Bolaños. Bolaños' idea was radical for its time. Maria Teresa Vianello was later married to Bolaños.
He had written a script about a woman president of United States.
Shortly after meeting Bobby Kennedy, Marilyn flew to Mexico City to see Bolaños and discuss his screenplay. Bolaños, who was 10 years younger than Monroe, quickly became Marilyn's lover.
He was a very attractive man, and I understand why Marilyn was interested in him, because he was a type. He was Mexican, truly Mexican.
Back in Los Angeles, Marilyn and her new lover attended the 1962 Golden Globes. Monroe and Bolaños continued to visit one another in their respective hometowns. But the ongoing romance with Bolaños did not stop Monroe from rendezvousing with the president that March.
Kennedy and Marilyn went off in secret for a weekend at Bing Crosby's Palm Springs home.
After her stay in Palm Springs, 20th Century Fox ordered Marilyn to report for work on April 23rd. Her new film, Something's Gotta Give, co-starred Dean Martin. The production was ready to begin, but Marilyn did not show up.
She had not been turning up for shooting because she had been sick. This is what the studio had been told.
By mid-May, Marilyn worked only 1/3 of her scheduled shooting days, costing the studio thousands of dollars a day. Fox executives were losing patience. Then Marilyn accepted an invitation to sing at President Kennedy's birthday bash at Madison Square Garden. Monroe boarded a plane for New York on May 17th. The studio immediately issued a breach of contract warning. The actress ignored it.
Her going to sing Happy Birthday to the President, which was something she agreed to do on that infamous weekend away, she did not have permission to go to New York to do this.
True to form, Marilyn showed up at the gala 2 hours late. She had to be sewn into her skin-tight dress, and she had been drinking.
Mr. President, the late Marilyn Monroe.
In front of 17,000 Democrats, Monroe caused a sensation with her breathy rendition of Happy Birthday.
Everybody, happy birthday!
I can now retire from politics after having had Happy Birthday sung to me in such a sweet, wholesome way.
After the Madison Square Garden performance, the president reconsidered his relationship with Monroe.
A lot of his close friends advised him and told him he had to cut it out, mess around with Marilyn Monroe. She was too well known.
Some people believe that after Jack Kennedy backed off, Marilyn began an affair with his brother Bobby.
When Jack stopped seeing her, I think that she was very happy to see Bobby.
Monroe returned to Los Angeles and to the set of Something's Got to Give. On Friday, June 1st, the cast and crew celebrated her 36th birthday. The following Monday, she was absent from work again. Fox executives had had enough.
The fact that she went to New York and was so publicly AWOL, that was the excuse that Fox used to just close down Something's Got to Give.
On June 7th, Fox fired Monroe from the film. The depressed actress went into seclusion at her home in Brentwood, taking pills and drinking. That July, 20th Century Fox filed suit against Marilyn for breach of contract. For support, Marilyn turned to her analyst, Dr. Greenson, and to Robert Kennedy.
There were the phone calls that she placed to his office in Washington. There were a number of those over a short period.
Once again, Marilyn felt the pain of abandonment.
She was desperately trying to get in touch with him after he decided he didn't want to have anything more to do with her.
At the end of July, Marilyn accepted an invitation to the Cal Neva Lodge on Lake Tahoe.
Frank Sinatra owned Cal Neva Lodge, and I think she's having a rendezvous with Frank that weekend.
Marilyn was in bad shape. Some biographers say that Sinatra wanted to marry her because he was afraid she was going to commit suicide. But Frank couldn't save Marilyn. No one could. Coming up, Something's Got to Give.
I said, Marilyn, the combination of those pills is lethal. It'll kill you. She says, they haven't killed me yet.
Mr. President, the late Marilyn Monroe.
By the summer of 1962, Marilyn Monroe's affairs with Jack and Bobby Kennedy were over. The 36-year-old actress was exhausted from a decade of emotional and physical stress. In July, Monroe reached out to her old producer and friend, Milton Green. Marilyn and Milton's partnership ended after she married Arthur Miller in 1956. Milton's son, Joshua Green.
Miller was behind her, and now it was a chance for them to get together because they were old, trusted friends, and they were actually looking forward to getting together again.
Some who were close to Marilyn felt she was coming out of her depression. Monroe's maid, Lena Pepitone.
She called me and she said she was to come home for Labor Day weekend to have a dinner for 35 people and have a big party.
But Marilyn's addictions were just as strong as ever. Hollywood columnist James Bacon paid Marilyn a visit one afternoon.
She's drinking Dom Perignon, the straight vodka, popping the pills, and I said to her, I said, Marilyn, the combination of those pills is lethal. It'll kill you. She says, they haven't killed me yet.
She had a lot of anger and power that she didn't use. So, you know, it's like having an atomic bomb in there. And I guess a lot of the drugs and alcohol were, in a way, to keep that down.
On Saturday, August 4th, Marilyn spent most of the day in a therapy session with her psychiatrist, Dr. Ralph Greenson. Afterwards, the doctor was apparently concerned. he asked Monroe's housekeeper, Eunice Murray, to stay with Marilyn overnight. That evening, the actress informed Murray that she would not be going out. Instead, Marilyn holed up in her bedroom. Murray went to bed. Marilyn listened to Frank Sinatra records and spoke on the phone with friends, including her hairdresser, her masseuse, and Joe DiMaggio's son. Murray awoke at 3 in the morning and checked on Marilyn. Monroe's door was locked, and the light appeared to be on. When Marilyn did not respond, Murray telephoned Dr. Greenson. Minutes later, the psychiatrist arrived and broke through the window to Monroe's bedroom. Greenson found Marilyn lying lifeless on her bed, her naked body draped by a sheet. In her hand was a telephone receiver. It was past 4 when police arrived on the scene, along with reporter James Bacon.
There was Marilyn lying on the bed nude, and I sized up the situation and left, and then pretty soon they brought her body out, and they covered her with a very cheap cotton blanket. And I must admit, I had to wipe away a tear. I don't know, I think it was that cheap cotton blanket, you know, on this glamorous star.
Marilyn's second husband, Joe DiMaggio, was summoned to the morgue to identify the body. DiMaggio was devastated and spent the night before the funeral in a vigil next to Marilyn's casket. On August 8th, a small crowd gathered at the Westwood Memorial Park Cemetery to lay Marilyn Monroe to rest. DiMaggio organized the funeral. Joe saw to it that Frank Sinatra and the Kennedys did not attend.
He thought that Hollywood had been the death of her, that had been her Hollywood friends who had precipitated the vulnerabilities and weaknesses she obviously already had.
10 days later, the Los Angeles County coroner issued a report.
Miss Monroe has suffered from psychiatric disturbance for a long time. On more than one occasion in the past, when disappointed and depressed, she had made a suicide attempt using sedative drugs. On these occasions, she had called for help and had been rescued. On the evening of August the 4th, it is our opinion that the same pattern was repeated except for the rescue. On the basis of all the information obtained, it is our opinion that the case is a probable suicide.
But many were unsatisfied with these findings. 40 years later, the debate over the cause of Marilyn's death continues. Some believe the mafia put a hit on Marilyn as a threat to Robert Kennedy, who was on a public crusade to squash organized crime. Author Robert Slater, who says he was briefly married to Marilyn in 1952 and remained a close friend until her death, has his own Kennedy theory.
She was a girl that knew too much, and there were certain big people in America at that time that were afraid of what she might do, because she had made the statement to me that night of Friday, August the 3rd, when we talked on the phone, that if she didn't hear from Bobby Kennedy by the first thing Monday morning, she was going to hold a press conference, and to quote her, she said, "I'm going to blow the lid off of this whole damned thing." And I think her death traces all the way back to the White House.
Others think that Marilyn's own self-destructive tendencies finally did her in.
I've always thought Marilyn Monroe died from an accidental overdose of booze and sleeping pills. The combination's very lethal.
If you knew every last detail of Marilyn's death, you still wouldn't know any more about her, who she was, or the mysteries of the human heart, which were the things that she was interested in.
Marilyn's third husband, Arthur Miller, was too shocked by Marilyn's death to attend the funeral. Miller worked out his tangled feelings by writing After the Fall, a play about a suicidal singer. After the Fall caused a firestorm when it opened on Broadway in 1964.
It was criticized quite roundly, but then again, it was a play. So, yes, there will be some links to what actually happened in his life, but a good dose of fiction.
Miller outlived Marilyn, but other lovers did not. On November 22, 1963, President John F. Kennedy was assassinated in Dallas. Robert Kennedy was also struck down by an assassin's bullet. The Attorney General was murdered in 1968 while campaigning for the presidency in Los Angeles. Joe DiMaggio carried a torch for Marilyn all his life. Joltin' Joe never remarried. and he never broke his public silence about Marilyn. For 20 years, Joe had roses delivered to her gravesite twice a week. The Yankee Clipper died of cancer on March 7, 1999. According to an article in Vanity Fair, his last words were, "I'll finally get to see Marilyn." When Marilyn was alive, she was used by many and truly loved by some.
The world lost one of the most special movie stars, I think, ever. She just was given a gift of luminous, is the only word I can think of.
People thought she was a dizzy blonde, right? The opposite was the truth. Believe me, by far.
The great thing about her, to me, was that the struggle was valiant. She was a very courageous human being.
Decades after her death, Marilyn Monroe receives a degree of adoration that little Norma Jean Baker could not have imagined.
Millions of people are still drawn to her, not because she was the most beautiful or the funniest, but because she was us.
There's that vulnerability behind it. It showed in her films, and we shared it in her real life.
Monroe's beauty, mystery, fragility, and power are a source of endless fascination. Joshua Green, who is digitally restoring his late father's Monroe prints, sees the interest firsthand.
The response to these pictures, whether it's a card, whether it's a poster, whether it's a print, no matter what it is, the draw is so great. It's almost like a needy void that can't be filled. Marilyn does live on in a way that is uncanny. I mean, people really do connect with her. And I mean young people who don't even know her connect with her and see her soul and her heart in many ways.
People see in her life and project into her life a great many of their own values and dreams. And I think that Marilyn Monroe and her life are all about that, about the possibilities of dreams.
Marilyn Monroe, the moviegoers of America, voted you the most popular actress of the year. My congratulations.
Thank you, Mr. Salmon.
And it's with honor and pride and pleasure I present this citation to you.
Thank you.
And as Best Young Box Office Personality, Miss Marilyn Monroe.
Thank you, Mr. Nichols.
I'd like to present to you the Look Achievement Award as the most outstanding film.
Look at that.